Hello, my name's John Kaufman, and I want to review Chinese digital watches, most of which came from AliExpress. Let me first talk a little bit about my background with watches and kind of what brought me down this rabbit hole. For years I've bought Casio watches, starting back in the early 1980s. I think I bought my first one. I believe it was at Target, and at that time they were amongst the cheapest watches I could find. I just went in and bought an inexpensive watch, and I was shocked at how good the quality was, how accurate it was. It did all these amazing things. It gave me a stopwatch, and it told me the date and the time. It had an alarm feature on it, so I was just blown away. So I've bought Casio watches for years, all up until maybe a year or two ago. Nothing but Casio watches. And typically, I'm hard on watches, and so typically after about 3 years, I would break the strap and I'd buy a new strap, and then typically, more often than not, within a couple years after that, I would break the watch at the lugs. So this little part right here on the watch case would break, and then it becomes unusable or unwearable on the wrist. So this particular watch is the Casio W218H, and I liked it because it had a 10-year battery and nice large digits, but I've never managed to wear the battery out on a Casio watch. I always break them first. So I decided to see what was available, from AliExpress, from the Chinese, and I was shocked at how much cheaper they were than the Casio watches. I've always thought of Casio as and I still think they're a great value for watches, but they're no longer amongst the cheapest watches. The Chinese watches that I bought are, many times at least 1/10 the price, or if not less, than the Casio watches. So let me talk first about a few Casio watches, and then and I'm going to probably be rambling quite a bit here, so forgive me for that. And then I'm going to go through all these Chinese watches that I've bought from AliExpress. I've actually bought, and I cannot justify this financially, it's pretty ridiculous, but I actually bought like 125 or so watches from AliExpress, most of which were dirt cheap. And my plan was to give them away to friends and family and that sort of thing. But I bought so many, it's hard for me to give them all away. But in any case, let me start going through the watches. So the first watch I want to talk about was this one, and like I said, I've already reviewed it a little bit, the 218H. The next one is kind of a classic. It's the Casio F91W. Now, what I'll say about all of these Casio watches, and this one I really like, because it's super comfortable and it does everything I need it to do. What I like about all these Casio watches is everything's just done really well. Like the viewing angles, the displays are crisp, the buttons all work really well. I've never had one where the buttons are broken or anything like that. Never had one damaged due to water. They tend to exceed their expectations. So if they say, like on this model, they say plus or minus 30 seconds, their spec is plus or minus 30 seconds a month. Well, I tested this over a month and I couldn't find any drift whatsoever. So, and that's really common with Casio watches. I think it's rated for just splash resistant, but there's countless stories of people who swim. And one guy actually has something on the internet, I think, where they take this particular watch down to, they put it in a pressure chamber and subject it to the water pressure of like 100 meters and it still survived. So they're pretty amazing. Having said all that, I don't subject any of my watches to that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't bathe in them, and I understand that's really hard on all watches. The hot water vapor tends to have its way of working into the watches, so I always try to take it off before I go into the shower room or anything. I never, unless I just made a mistake, I wouldn't bathe with it or shower with it. Don't go swimming with watches. I don't swim that much anyway. So I believe in treating the watches carefully, but these are known to exceed expectations. The next one I have from Casio is the W736, and what I like about this, I got this for $20, I think, from Walmart, and I bought this when that other one went bad, and it just has nice big displays. I like, one of the things I like about this, which the F91W that I just showed you doesn't have, is the bezel around the crystal is raised, so it tends to protect it from being scratched. So this is a W736H. And then the next one I have from Casio, and this is the last Casio watch, and then I'm going to get into the Chinese watches, is the AE-1500WH. And I really like this watch. I've got some Chinese watches that are kind of similar to this, which I'll be showing. But this watch has really nice big digits, which I like. As I get older, I have to wear glasses to see things up close. So I really like the nice big digits on this. I like it's got everything I need. In fact, it's some of these Casio watches, like this one, I think you set the not just the month and the day, but you set the year, and so it adjusts automatically for daylight saving times. You know, so a lot of really cool features on these watches. I'm not into all that stuff. I don't need any of that, but it's there. The next watch I want to talk about is one I got from eBay. I got 3 of this model, and this is the Onyx HX, and I got some from that brand on AliExpress as well. I think I paid $2 for these. I got 3 of them. This has a negative display. I really like the looks of this. I think it's really cool, but it is kind of hard to see the negative displays, you know, if you're not in very good lighting. This one also has a raised bezel around the crystal, so it protects the glass. One thing about this watch is I was wearing it with some sleeves that were really, really tight. I have a windbreaker with super tight grip around the wrist, and when I was pulling that off, it actually pulled off one of the buttons, the push buttons on this watch. So I don't think that would have happened with my other watches. I try to be more careful now when I wear that particular garment or anything with a super tight sleeve. That's the only one I have, I think, that's super tight like that. But in any case, I don't think, you know, I've never ever had that happen with any of my Casio watches, and I think most of the other watches that I'm going to be showing you, I don't think that would have happened. So that's kind of a weakness, I think, of this particular watch. The next watch I want to talk about, in fact, I'm going to talk about 2, are some Chinese homages. Some people would call them fake F91Ws. They don't say Casio on them, so I don't like, you know, referring to them that way. There's a guy who has a YouTube video out there who really, in fact, a few people who really kind of bang on these watches. They don't like them, but these do everything that I need a watch to do. They're not very accurate. Now there's 2 different types here. Most of the ones I have the F91W signal on them. They don't say Casio, so I wouldn't call them, you know, a ripoff or anything like that. The other one doesn't even say F91W, but it's clearly patterned after that, and all the logic and everything's laid out identically to the Casio F91W. The one here with the F91W signature symbol on it, what I like about it is it's super comfortable, just like the actual Casio. I mean, the band is super flexible, super comfortable, so lightweight. I forget that I'm wearing it. The other one, this one, is not as accurate. In fact, these are not, you know, their quality control is not very good. And these 2, both these, are unbranded. And in general, I think that if you get unbranded watches from AliExpress or from the Chinese, if it's unbranded, the quality is going to, to me, there's a big difference in quality between something that's branded and something that's unbranded. These are both unbranded. Both of them have their drawbacks. I like this one that doesn't have the F91 logo on it. I like the display. The buttons are crisper, but it's less accurate. And neither of them are super accurate. One of them, I think these were $1.29, the ones with the F91W, and these other ones were a little bit more expensive. I got 1 or 2 of these from eBay, and I think I got some others from AliExpress. I got a whole bunch of these, and they range in accuracy from like 6 seconds, you know, to some of them were as bad as like 2.5 minutes, you know, over the month. I'd say on average, you know, these with the F91W were probably about 30-second drift or so, you know, a month, which to me is fine. You know, and I use these, I believe in using them kind of as beater watches. Okay, the next watch I want to talk about is, and I really like this brand. It's spelled Synoke. It's called, I got on the internet and somebody said the way you pronounce that in Chinese is Synoke. Some people pronounce it Synoke, but I'm going to use what this person who claims to be an expert said it was Synoke. So in any case, this is model 9620 sports watch. It's an homage to the G-Shock series. I really like the appearance of this. It has a nice crisp display. The accuracy is good. Most of these fall within that plus or minus 30 second a month, with the very worst one out of the 13 I bought like this, the very worst one was 70-second drift in a month. But that was a little bit of an outlier. So this brand I really like, you know, these were dirt cheap. I think I paid $1.90 each for these. So the next brand I want to talk about is Sanda, S-A-N-D-A, and this brand has a pretty good reputation from what I've seen from other YouTube reviewers. This particular watch, I really like the appearance of it, the green and black. It's an homage to this W, I think it was 218H, I think. The first one I bought years ago from Walmart, and the lug broke. But they're essentially identical looking. What I don't like about this Sanda is, again, the bezel doesn't rise above the crystal, so it's going to get scratched up, you know, as time goes on. But I like the appearance of it. They're quite accurate, these Sanda watches. I think all of them, every single one of, well, one of them was slightly outside of the plus or minus 30 second window, but most of them were within that plus or minus 30 second window, so they're good. The next watch I want to talk about is another F91W clone, but this is a branded one. It's the brand name is Skmei, and some expert on the internet said that the way to pronounce that in Chinese is Skmei. So a lot of people pronounce it Skmei, but he said Skmei, so I'm going to try to call these Skmeis. So this is an F91 kind of clone. It has a much better backlight than the F91W does, made from Casio. It's not as accurate. The viewing angles, if you look at it off center, are not as good. But overall, the fit and finish is really good. A lot of people give this really good reviews. So again, that's SK, and those I think I paid $4. They were one of the more expensive ones. I paid $4.16 each for those. The next one is, in my opinion, the very best value of all these Chinese watches. This is the Synoke. I'm going to pronounce it Synoke again. Synoke. It's model number 61576. So 61576 has really large digits. The reading angles are all really good. I can see the date, the time, the day of the week. You know, everything I need. It's got a stopwatch on there and an alarm, which I don't use anymore since I don't work anymore. But I do use the stopwatch daily. When I walk my dog, I like to keep track of how long I'm walking. And then occasionally I do things where I'm up on a stage and I have to watch my time. And so I like to set the stopwatch for this. And what I really like about this is, again, from the viewing angles, the nice large digits. As my eyes get a little bit older, I really appreciate the big digits. This is great. Like when I'm up on stage, I can just glance down and see how much time has elapsed and where I am time-wise. So these were, I paid $2.89 each for them. The accuracy for these, I bought actually I bought 19 of these models, and every single one of them was within 15 seconds. Most of them were within the large majority were well within 5 seconds. Most of them were just 1, 2, or 3 seconds off a month, and really good quality control. So I guess the movement that they use in this particular watch is really good. So this brand Synoke, I give top scores for value. Now, unfortunately, you can't get these for the same price I got them. I got all these watches before the tariffs kicked in, so you might have to add 30% or so to what I paid. But I paid $2.89 for these. So So that was a great watch. The next one is another Synoke watch. This is a cheaper watch. Not the quality is not as good. This is model 9023B. What I liked about this is lightweight. It's kind of a mixture between the F91W, which is super lightweight, and the one I just looked at, the 61576. It's got large digits. What I don't like about the viewing angles aren't as good. The display's a little more washed out. I kind of like the logic of when you want to look at the date, you just push this upper right hand corner and it shows the date on there, the date, the day of the week and the month. So I really like that. It's got a stopwatch. It's got everything. Again, all these watches have everything I need, which is a stopwatch and, you know, and tell the time and the date. So these watches, the ones I just looked at, their accuracy is, I would call it good, but not great. Most of these are, you know, most of them are within 15 seconds. There are, I think out of 15 of these that I bought, there was one that was outside of the plus or minus 30-second window. So, you know, for me, that's more than good enough. You know, it's really good accuracy. I mean, unless you're getting really nitpicky and, you know, that's your thing. But you know, for practical use, I can't imagine hardly. I mean, it takes just a few seconds to reset the watch. And, you know, we're talking about less than a minute a month. The next watch I want to talk about is maybe my second favorite. And this would vie for maybe my favorite watch. This is another homage of one of the G-Shock watches. It's made by Skmei Skmei. This is model 1628. These are also very accurate, almost all of them. I think I bought 6 models of these, and all of them but one were within 15 seconds per month, and one of them was just slightly out. I think one of them was 23 seconds per month out of the 6. So, you know, really accurate. Nice crisp display, great buttons. You know, this again, the Skmei, this one's, the viewing angles seem to be better than on that other Skmei watch that I showed. So these have a really good reputation. This was really inexpensive as well. I got these for $3.79 each, which is a steal for this watch. The next watch is one that I think is closer to getting what you pay for. I think all of these really exceed expectations. It's called, I'll try to pronounce it, Yikaze. So Yikaze. It's a negative display, which makes it, this one is kind of hard to read unless you have really good lighting. And it's kind of like, you know, I guess I couldn't see what I was getting quite when I looked at the pictures on AliExpress, but it looks kind of like a kid's watch. I just don't care for the appearance of it as much. But I will say that they're quite accurate. You know, one of them was 7 seconds a month. I bought 2 of these, and the other one was 14 seconds a month. So, you know, pretty accurate. The next watch is another Onyx HX watch, and I got these because I really liked the large digits. And these were also really expensive. I think I paid $2.19 each for these. I use this when I'm up on stage some too because the digits are so large. It's not as good as the Synoke. If you look at it off angle a little bit, you know, it's a little harder to see. The off angle display is not as good. But still, I really like that watch. I like those nice big digits. And then to end up, I want to talk about some watches I bought that are again unbranded, and so these, the quality takes a dip, quite a big dip actually. These are no-name watches. They're again G-Shock homages. They come in 2 styles, black and white casing. What I like about these, I like the appearance of them. I also like another watch I showed. I like that you can push this upper right-hand button and see the date and time, so I really like that. They've got stopwatch. I use these all the time. I've been wearing this type of watch quite a bit, and you know, had it out in rain and gotten it wet. Not intentionally, but you know, seems to do just fine with all of that stuff. one of the things a couple things I don't like about it, the quality, the accuracy of these watches, the quality control is not nearly as good as the branded watches, especially like Synoke and Sanda and Skmei. So the quality, the quality control is not as good. The displays are more washed out looking. They're not as crisp. They're certainly readable, but I just don't like looking at them as much as you get into that kind of thing. And again, the accuracy's not nearly as good. I've got some of these. In fact, the very worst one I think drifted 190 seconds over a month's time. So that's like over 3 minutes. Most of them were much better than that. And one of the things I've noticed with these unbranded watches too is they seem to be like batch dependent. So I bought several of these white watches at one time, and they were more accurate. And then I bought a whole bunch of these black and clear ones, and they weren't as accurate. Same exact watch, just different color on the casing. So that seems to be the case, I noticed, with some of these unbranded watches in particular. The quality control, maybe it just has to do with they get a load of like movements, the quartz movements, and one batch is just better than another, I guess. One other thing I don't like about these watches, and I like them, don't get me wrong, I like all of these watches, but one of the things about these where the quality shows, and I don't know if you can see this, but the back is stainless steel, but the little screws they use, there's 4 screws that hold the casing on, and they're not stainless, so they rust really bad, especially in the summer with sweat and that sort of thing. Now a little alcohol, I just take an alcohol on a cotton swab and take that around and clean it up, and that cleans it up pretty nicely, but it actually kind of bled into the case. You can see where the case is kind of orange looking, which it didn't come that way. It should look like these two, which haven't been worn as much. You can see these cases aren't orangish looking. So that's one thing I don't like about these. Another thing about this particular watch that I don't like is the battery that comes with them is pretty small. And so, some of these, after having them less than a year, the battery went bad. Now the batteries are dirt cheap. I bought like a pack of 10 or something from Amazon, so it didn't cost me much, and it's easy to replace them. But still, if I spent like 50 cents on a battery, then that dirt cheap price just went up, where it would pay to get a little nicer watch. So in any case, my thoughts are, if you're wanting just to get a watch that does what certainly I want it to do, which is tell the time and give you a stopwatch, figure out what you're really going to use it for. The Chinese watches, you can't beat them for value, in my opinion. I mean, if you're really into like super precision and that kind of thing, by all means get a Casio or do whatever. But as far as value and practicality goes, all of these watches are super practical. And if you get a branded watch like the Synoke one I was showing you, if you get something like that, what was this, $289 or something, I think, it's just remarkable how the value you get for something like this. There's a guy on the internet that has this particular watch, and he took it to the ocean and went swimming with waves crashing all over it, and then he went swimming in a swimming pool the next day, so it's exposed to salt water and the waves crashing on it and exposed to chlorine. I don't know that he took it into the bathroom or anything. I think that's supposed to be particularly hard. But in any case, then there's another guy who's worn it daily for a couple years and, talks about how much he has liked the watch and how it's held up really well. It's a little bit nicked up, from a couple years of wearing daily use. But in any case, so that's my thoughts. I think, some of the people who really, really downgrade these watches, I consider that to be kind of watch snobbery. On the other hand, if you want a really precision, if you really get into, super great Japanese engineering, Casio, or then there are of course people who buy the mechanical watches, the Rolexes and all that stuff, which I just can't relate to that myself. But in any case, those are my thoughts. I'm going to put a link to, I put a spreadsheet with all of these watches listed. on Google Sheets, and I'll put a link to that in the description. So, you know, if you have any thoughts or comments, put them in the comment section, and I'll try to look at those periodically and maybe answer them. So, in any case, thanks for watching. Bye.